Hello everybody, welcome to the latest episode of FPL Affairs, the podcast that discusses our 9-month-long love affair with FPL, including the ins and outs that keep us awake at night. In this second video from Gameweek 17, we look at forward dilemmas you may be having, may it be Jackson or Isak, or any mid to lower range budgetary options if you're going to replace Cunha. We also finish with our own transfer plans. Anyway, let's get cracking.
And there's Mo Salah. There goes Haaland. He's on his way again. He's hungry. He's scored. Ice cold precision from Palmer. Oh, Saka! That is a diamond of a goal.
Hello everybody, I am Matt, aka FPL Affairs the Veteran, joined once again with Jack, aka the Master. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. You?
Yeah, not too bad. We're keeping our green arrows rolling. If you
hopefully.
watched our episode released yesterday for Game Week 17, so this, our second episode, we're going to concentrate on forward dilemmas before looking at our own teams for the forthcoming week. In yesterday's episode, we expressed concerns and deepest intentions towards scrapping all of the Wolves assets, which, even though neither of us have Cunha, with his behavioural forthcoming, that anyone jumping off him, we think should jump off him possibly before Leicester at the weekend or possibly after, because Wolves are likely, you would think, to appeal just so he can play that Leicester game. Anyway, with that dilemma amongst reports I read today of Haaland being unhappy, we're going to concentrate the first part on different forward dilemmas. So, who's your front line at the moment, Jack?
I've got Chris Wood, Strand Larson, and Nicholas Jackson.
So, are you thinking of getting rid of Strand Larson then?
Yeah, one of Strand Larson or Chris Wood, obviously budget related, because I think there's like $1 million difference after Chris Wood's price rises. But yeah, one of them's going, and if I was to choose one, it would be obviously Strand Larson, but it's all money dependent. But hopefully these next 25 minutes to 3 hours that we talk about forwards will help me make up my mind on which one whichever one I waffle about the most will probably be the one that comes in. So we'll see.
Yeah. So on screen pictured, we've got Nicholas Jackson and Alexander Isak on one side, the sort of more of the pricier end of the non-Haaland spectrum. And on the other side, looking a little bit more budget-wise, of João Pedro of Brighton and Evan Nielsen of Bournemouth. So our wonderful friend, Barry Stokes, All in Football podcast, has put us a image together comparing Watkins, Jackson and Isak to start off with. What do you want to look at first on there, Jack?
Watkins, I think, is a pretty obvious talking point. Based mainly on having the highest XG and the highest XGI and the highest big chances.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, having the least amount of goals based on Isak versus Watkins minutes this season, with Isak missing for a few games. So Watkins and Aston Villa as a team are obviously underperforming this year. All legs are in the Champions League basket by the looks of things. And he was dropped this weekend. I think rested, personally, but he was dropped this weekend for Duran, who scored, and it seems like every time he plays, he scores. So I would say that people will be looking to move off of Watkins. And there are two standout options, in my opinion, which are Nicholas Jackson and Alexander Isak. And as you can see there, both are on the same amount of assists. I'd actually say they're very similar players in the way they play within their team.
I dispute that.
You probably would. Well, that's fine, but yeah, I would say that if you were to talk about an out and out number 9, it would be more Jackson over Isak,
Yeah.
because Isak's obviously similar player to like a Thierry Henry, who likes to dribble with the ball and has got a bit of technical ability. What I mean is that what they do for their team is quite similar, with hard yards, dropping deep and sort of
Yeah.
picking up the ball in deep areas and playing people in, hence their high number of assists. And then I think it's the difference between the two teams really has been the form. The two players has been the form of the two teams, with Newcastle having a poor start to the season and Chelsea having a very good one. Newcastle's form is obviously on the up, that's for sure, with some good results, and Chelsea's have maintained that strong start to the season by continuing to win games and score goals. If I was to pick my favourite out of the three, I would say Nicholas Jackson, based on his fixtures. From an FPL point of view, coming up over the next 8 weeks, Chelsea's fixtures are better than Newcastle, so I think that's indisputable, really. However, if you were to choose a striker to play for your team, it would be Alexander Isak. So it's a 50-50 flip of a coin between the two of them. I think Newcastle as a team aren't as consistent as Chelsea this season. However, haven't been as consistent as they have been in previous seasons. So that what they're currently experiencing now could be the beginning of a steady patch in form as they push further up the league. Chelsea are sort of, obviously, Liverpool have had a couple of draws recently, but they're probably the one team up at that end of the table that haven't had a blip yet and haven't had a run of mixed results. So whether they're due one or not. But to cut a long story short, I would order, from an FPL point of view, definitely would order this as Jackson number 1, then Isak number 2, and then Watkins number 3. Purely from an FPL standpoint. Obviously, you can see the predicted points from game week 17 to 21 is in Isak's favour. But if you were to do that for 17 to like 25, I'm sure you'd probably see it in Jackson's favour. So it depends really on how long you want him in for. Or
I think for me, and looking at comparison, is Watkins has got the highest expected goals, true, marginally above Jackson, and the highest expected goal involvement. But yeah, as you said, it's the minutes now which is a concern. And he's had the most big chances, 21. But you'd kind of expect, really, for 21 big chances that someone would get more than 7 goals for that point. What stands out looking at it for me, though, although like goals, Jackson 9, Watkins and Isak with 7. Assists, Jackson and Isak the best with 4 each. Expected assists, Isak's the highest by a considerable amount. Expected goal involvement, Isak's just behind Watkins. Isak's got the fewest big chances and the fewest expected goals, but I would say that is skewed by the start of the season, because Newcastle start of the season, we really struggled creating chances for him. So he was dropping deeper and deeper to get involved in the game, and he was barely getting a sniff at all. So there'd be games going by where he'd maybe have one chance of any kind in the whole entire game. He's in the state at the moment of picking up that. So if this stats was driven from,
it's like 8 or 9, isn't it?
Around about the game week 8 or something, though expected goals and would have been higher, and probably I'd say the vast majority of those big chances, those 13 big chances, have happened in the last 8 game weeks.
Yeah.
So those are skewed there, and he's got the most predicted points for those. And his expected assists, his actual assists, would be significantly higher if it wasn't for Jacob Murphy at the weekend. Before I get slated by any Newcastle fans that watched, I have been informed that, from what I saw in the highlights and people there, is that he did play really well and he had some really good chances. I'm saying this from a tongue-in-cheek perspective because of him missing some chances that were arguably easier to score than the ones he actually did score. And it would have effectively meant that Isak would have got a hat-trick of assists. So, but there you go.
What's your rate then? How did you rate these 1 to 3?
For me, Isak 1, Jackson 2, Watkins 3.
I wanted to make one final point on Watkins just quickly, and that is
Yep.
in our last video we looked at fixture swings and we looked at easier fixtures and who had the easiest fixtures overall. And I think Aston Villa were third on the table behind Fulham and Arsenal, I think it was, or somebody like that. So if he
Manchester United.
So if
Crystal Palace were fourth.
That's right. So if he has got that XG, that XGI, and has had that many big chances, and if he were to have if he was to hit some form, if you wanted to take a punt on keeping Watkins over the next 10 games, I think there are worse moves you can make, that's for sure. The fixtures are there, the data's there. He's obviously not taking his chances when he gets them. But if he were to sort of start and hit a streak, it would be over the next 10 games based on the fixtures.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like we touched on, there is now a big minutes risk there with Duran coming in, who, by the way, if he does get that number 9 spot off Watkins, will be crowbarred in by pretty much every FPL manager that plays the game. So just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he'll be going straight in my basket if he starts every game. John Duran.
Yeah, well, the next slide we've got up, still comparing those 3 players, but more on a fixtures perspective for each of them. And with greater data, we've got goals conceded by the defences they're up against, expected goals conceded by those teams.
Funny, they're both playing each other. So this was my point on the fixtures, which is why I went Jackson over Isak. That was my point. So obviously Isak's a great striker, don't get me wrong, and I certainly, like I said, if Southampton were to be taken over by Saudi Arabian billionaires and they wanted to buy a striker, I would have chosen Isak. But from an FPL standpoint, looking at that run of fixtures for Chelsea versus the run of fixtures for Newcastle, that's why I would have Jackson. So it's just based purely on fixtures. However, the form of Isak currently is better than Jackson over the last 4 or 5 game weeks. So, and as you can see at the top there with Watkins, his fixtures are about to swing in game week 19. So is Watkins a must sell with Man City at home? I don't think so. Man City have really struggled to keep clean sheets this season. If he does start, then maybe. Newcastle away is obviously a tough game. Like you say, at St James's Park's never a nice place to go. If he can nick a return in that game, obviously in a loss, but if he can nick a return in that game, then you've got him for some nice fixtures after that. But yeah, Jackson's top there for me. And that Ipswich game, that looks glorious. As does the Bournemouth one.
I think Watkins really, if you've got him, Villa are at home and Man City's defending is atrocious at the moment. So that also stands going briefly off point with Morgan Rogers. Yes, his price is dropping, but it's not necessarily the worst fixture in the world as they're at home and Man City are on a really rough run. But I don't want to get sidetracked too much with that. But yeah, game week 19 especially would be keeping an eye on Watkins' minutes and how he does in the next couple of games before paying a closer attention to him from them. whereas Isak over 19 and 20. Yes, over those two games, he's got down as the toughest ones, Manchester United away and Tottenham away. But
They're not great defences, are they?
no, they're not. And you look at some of the...
Neither is the Villa one, really, either. So there are 3 games there where he could easily score in all of those games.
Oh yeah, he could score in all of them, not a problem.
And I might bring him in yet this week. So because I'm frightened to death of him at Ipswich this weekend and what that might do to my rank. I've already got Jackson, and we spoke about it sort of like game week 10 or 11, where we spoke about maybe if we were to not target the premium midfielders and maybe target these 3 premium attackers instead with the Haaland money. I think obviously if you kept Salah, I think you'd be up. I think if we'd have not gone for Saka Palmer, and obviously it depends on who you bring in for them, but if we'd have kept Salah and gone for sort of Jackson and Isak as opposed to Saka and Palmer, I think we'd be up. But anyway, it is what it is. But yeah, you can see my reasoning behind having Jackson first there, but Isak's still a very good option. And if I was a Watkins owner, he'd be a don't sell, but he's a don't buy as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. A keep.
A keep.
Yeah. So, bearing in mind those are Havertz aside, they're the 3 most premium forwards. If you're looking at more budget options, like if you're trying to readjust your funds, I've got coming up pictured João Pedro still and Evan Nilsson. In addition to these, you've still got Wissa at Brentford.
Chris Wood.
Yeah, still ish. Cunha, if you're going to keep hold, although I can expect increases in sales.
Yeah. Once that ban comes in.
So what are your thoughts on the current budget options at the moment?
Well, I think standout budget options are Evan Nilsson, João Pedro, Raul Jimenez, and Chris Wood. Those are the 4. Not a lot of people are buying Chris Wood at the moment, which is understandable. The fixtures aren't necessarily great, so probably no point in talking about him. But I've got him, and I'm in no rush to sell him, to be honest. I'm quite happy having him in my team. He'll get me what he can get me.
Yeah.
There was a clambering from both of us for João Pedro a couple of weeks ago, especially with the Southampton game coming up. Especially, I remember you thinking quite strongly about bringing him in.
I didn't in the end.
No, didn't in the end. But I mean, he was on my radar. Of course he was, even before he came back from injury. But Brighton are a team on a real dip in form, and that seemed to have coincided with them playing all of the teams that you'd have wanted João Pedro in for. He is certainly getting consistency of minutes with Welbeck out. So if I'm a João Pedro owner, I'm not selling him just yet. And Evan Nilsson, again, I really looked at Evan Nilsson and wanted him after his hat-trick of assists for Kluivert's hat-trick of penalties. But even before then, I think we spoke about him on the pod.
Yeah, he's had a run of a few goals.
Yeah, and I think Bournemouth, again, are a side in good form that play good attacking football. So he's not consistent enough for me. But at that price, are you going to get that consistency? Probably not. So you probably should take that with a pinch of salt. But I make him a good option. And in last episode, I spoke about Fulham's massive, their massive uptake in fixture difficulties, about to get a whole lot easier after the next couple of game weeks. So I sort of make him one of the best budget options. But I think we've got some data on those guys, which we'll discuss in a sec.
Right, so again, our wonderful Barry has done some slides of alternative £7.5 million and under strikers, comparing fixtures as well as stats for Evan Nilsson, João Pedro, Mateta, who we spoke in yesterday's episode, along with Raul Jimenez when we spoke about Palace and Fulham. We haven't mentioned Haaland of Manchester United. He's up there at 6.9 million. Chris Wood at 6.6.
Yep.
And all at the pricey end of this bracket, Dom Solanke at 7.5. So we've got up there first the fixtures. What stands out from those options to you?
Well, Raul Jimenez. That's why I make him the best on that list. Obviously, so this weekend they are a team in very poor form, and Fulham are very much in the ascendancy. So I make them very good favourites going into that game, and then it's Bournemouth at home and Ipswich at home. So they've got their three best fixtures from an attacking standpoint at home, in my opinion. I do like Rasmus Højlund, and I did think about bringing him in earlier on this season. It does seem to be like over the last episodes I've sort of said, avoid Manchester United players, but it does seem to me that Amorim has made his decision on his number 9, and that being Rasmus Højlund. Obviously, in the last episode, we looked, they're second on the fixture ticker overall, with some nice fixtures coming up. Just that Newcastle and Liverpool game for me would sort of put me off him slightly. Evan Nilsson, I touched on in the previous slide, has got some. There's not great defences in those fixtures coming up for him. Bournemouth are obviously a good attacking side and good value.
Everton have turned a corner defensively.
Yeah, because they finally got their best back four, all fit and playing. However, Pickford is making a lot of saves, and maybe that's sort of papering over some cracks. But no, they're certainly a much more solid defence than they were. And João Pedro's been a bit of a flop for owners, unfortunately. I'm not interested in Dominic Solanke at his price, and I'm not interested in Mateta because of his rotation risk. Long story short, I own Chris Wood. Quite happy with Chris Wood over those fixtures. But yeah, João Pedro, for me, has been the biggest flop out of those options recently. However, if I was an owner, I certainly wouldn't be rushing him out the door with West Ham, Brentford and Ipswich as 3 out of the next 5 fixtures. So, yeah, I think we see on the next slide with the data.
Before we go on to the data, and this is me saying this tongue-in-cheek because of who you are, Jack, is if you've got the free transfer luxury each week and can splash the cash or take hits or whichever, from those pictured you could get Jimenez in for this weekend's fixture because he is at home to Southampton. Then raise the funds so that for game week 19 you can switch to Mateta for his home match against Southampton. And then switch back to Jimenez the following week for Ipswich at home, and then Højlund for Southampton at home in game week 21.
Yeah, you could go Jimenez to Evan Nilsson to Mateta to Jimenez to Højlund and just live the dream.
And you get Southampton at home 3 times in 5 weeks.
3 times. Well, we're very good away from home. We're very good away from home in comparison with home.
Right.
We're not. We're absolutely hopeless no matter where we play.
Well, let's go. Let's have a look at the data of these striking gentlemen.
Here we go. Let's hope I'm right. Right. So there we go.
The comparison of the goal tally is a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Chris Wood is why I'm happy holding Chris Wood. I know there have been minutes for sort of João Pedro and Mateta and Højlund. But yeah, that's why I'm happy keeping Chris Wood. He is a consistent returner, and his XG is very nice at 0.45 as well. I think it's third or maybe fourth on this list. But yeah, quite happy with that. Quite happy to just keep him ticking along. Jimenez and Solanke are drawn. But if you look at their price differences there, I think we can all agree that Dominic Solanke is not worth the 2 million extra. And Evan Nilsson,
you'd rather save the 2 million from Dom Solanke down to Jimenez and put that 2 million either in defence or upgrading your fourth midfielder or.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do in the game for 2 million, especially with fixture swings that are happening at the moment, like such as Liverpool and Arsenal. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with this table. It cements everything I said. I think that Mateta would be lovely if there was just that security of minutes there. Now, whether or not Glasner puts their recent uptake in form to Mateta coming into the team and then playing differently with him, we'll wait and see. And if that is the case, and he is then their starting number 9, then he's certainly an option to look at from game week 19 or 20, I believe, when their fixtures really do swing in a good way. Hence why he's got such high predicted points over the next 4 weeks. But yeah, Dominic Solanke's data, he's underperforming his data massively, in my opinion. And he has got consistency of minutes, and he is playing in, I think, Tottenham have been the best attacking side in the Premier League this season, scoring the most goals. And for a centre forward, in that team to have only scored 5 is quite disappointing. And I watched him at St Mary's, unfortunately, at the weekend on Sunday night, and he's odd. He's not involved. He's not involved. Like, I watched with a grimace whilst obviously we were getting smashed.
Yeah.
And hoping that he didn't get involved. And I think he walked out of that game with 1 assist. And to be honest with you, he didn't look like getting a goal, and he didn't look like really that involved.
My thoughts about Dom Solanke are, if in the Spurs system, he's basically playing a bit like Kane did by dropping deeper and then having the sort of the attacking 3 midfielders running in behind or running past. So he's doing a lot more dropping deep.
He presses well. He does press well. Definitely presses well.
But his striking boots are nowhere near as good as Harry Kane's. So
no, not the truth. Yeah, I think rating this from top to bottom, for me, it's Jimenez, Haaland, Wood, Evan Nilsson, Pedro, Mateta, Solanke. That would be my rating. And I have Haaland up there purely based on his fixtures, because I reckon Man United are probably about to score some goals. They're going to concede some goals, but I reckon they'll score some goals.
For me, I think in some ways it's pointing out Mateta and Jimenez for me. João Pedro brighten off form a little bit. Evan Nilsson has got the potential, and Bournemouth have got some okay fixtures. Jimenez has got the best fixtures. Haaland, I'm worried about minutes. Solanke's just underperforming. So, but then to be fair, looking at all of them, I'm content and okay with my front line. To be honest. Well, should we discuss our transfer plans?
Yeah.
Now, spoiler alert, Jack and I have both made one of our 2 free transfers already without speaking to each other in advance.
Yeah, we have genuinely both made a transfer and then spoke to each other about it after making it, and it turns out I think we made the same one.
Exactly the same one. And did you make it Saturday night?
Yeah, before Aït-Nouri was due to drop, I think. So I sort of rushed him out for Anthony Robinson. And I think my wonderful co-host is just as clever as I am, if not smarter, and did the same thing.
Yeah, did exactly the same thing.
I
Smartness
just
doesn't
think it
come
was
into it because
such
of
an
it.
obvious move, though, wasn't it? Anthony Robinson just had a great game. And they were
Yeah,
about to play Southampton, and Aït-Nouri's banned. It's the easiest transfer I've made this season by a mile.
I'd be very, 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 very surprised if once the deadline passes and like live FPL shows the most popular
Yeah,
transfer combos made, I'd be
yeah,
very surprised if the top is not Aït-Nouri to Robinson.
yeah, yeah. And for anybody listening that's thinking about it, do it. Because for me, like I said, it's the easiest transfer I've made this
I
season.
think I think it wouldn't have been if Munoz had not got that fifth yellow and be missing, then it would have been a little bit more of a talking point.
Yeah, I think I probably would have still gone with Robinson though, just because you're out of the frying pan and into the fire then, because you go from 4 yellow cards to 4 yellow cards.
Yeah.
But I think Munoz definitely, speaking in the last episode, definitely on the radar and likely to show up in my team once he served
Mm.
his ban. But we'll see
Yeah.
what FPL throws at me.
Yeah.
What have we got?
Well,
Bust teams.
show up your bus team.
Has it got captaincy on Palmer? Yeah, no, yeah, it does.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about the rushed element of the image on this one. Palmer got half cropped off, and I haven't got your bench on there.
That's all right. Well, I can tell you now that Robinson goes in front of Mikalenko and is predicted 4.1 this week,
Mm.
I believe. So that's ready in.
Who's on your bench? Just looking from.
I've got Rogers, Aït-Nouri's obviously on there, but that's technically now Mikalenko. And there is Voutfas still on there,
Yeah.
collecting dust. And obviously the reserve Brentford goalie, which I still hate myself for doing. Because if I was saying to you before we started recording, there are 5 players that I currently want.
Yeah.
One's maybe even more than that. One is Alisson. One is Trent. One is Yuri and Timber. One is Diogo Jota.
Yeah.
One is Isak. And I think, yeah, that's right. And then the other one is Raul Jimenez. So there's 6 players. So if I had a wild card, I'd be pushing that button. But I've got one free transfer left and need to decide what to do with it. Now, I'm toying with the idea of doing Gordon to Jota, but I'm not going to do it because I'm just not with Ipswich away. It's a bad move. So that leaves me with Rogers to Jota. Rogers is going down in price this evening, so there's a chance that I might just have to take a hit on that 0.1. And then I've got the money. Oh, do I have the money? I don't have the. I do have the money to do Strand Larson to Isak. I think. In fact, I do. I know I do. So that's a extremely tempting move to just do that. I mean, I'm sure everybody's screaming at me to do it, but it then prices me out of a Trent move, and it prices me out of a Alisson move. So all my money, all my Haaland money that I was saving for a house in the Cayman Islands.
How much have you got roughly
I
left?
think like anywhere between 3.2 and like 3.5 million in the bank, which is nice and healthy. And I should just be on here going, I'm going Strand Larson to Isak. But there are knock-ons to that, like a Trent. But to be honest with you, I just have the tendency of a bit of a clingy owner. I just cling to these dreams of Strand Larson going and scoring at Leicester because I've had him in my team for so long and he's done so little that it's just like that last thing where I'm a little bit like, oh, maybe I'll just hold him for this week because right that I don't need to make any transfers in that team. Now that I've done Aït-Nouri to Robinson, I could literally just roll that other transfer. I could just leave
And
it.
for those of you that have been watching recently, Jack's favourite phrase for this month is sticking in with the wrapping paper. Roll where you can.
Roll where you can, yeah.
But then in yesterday's release, you were also very much get rid of Wolves assets. So
Yeah.
are you going to go against your advice and keep Strand Larsen?
Well, I'm very good at going against my advice. I seem to just every week I come on the pod, and every week I talk about numerous moves I can make, and 9 times out of 10 I roll. So, if in doubt, do now. But I want Raul Jimenez, and that's just what I mean. I've got all these players that I want, and 6 of them, and 1 free transfer, loads of money, but don't particularly know where to spend it. Want Trent, but I wanted Trent a couple of weeks ago. Now I don't particularly want Trent as much. Want Diogo Jota, but he's a minute's risk and want to wait and see how he gets on tomorrow if he starts against Southampton, because then I think he's likely to be benched this weekend. It's just like, it's crying out for Strand Larsen to Isak or Strand Larsen to Jimenez. It's just crying out for it. So maybe I should just stop overthinking it and just do the easy move, because Isak's better go up in price as well.
Do you want some AI advice from Fantasy
Yeah,
Football Club?
what crazy idea have they got this week?
Well, when I put it in, and those of you watching, Jack doesn't know, I haven't told him, and I was extremely surprised what it came up with.
Oh, is it Haaland?
That was the first one,
Oh. Wait for
which for those listening was sell
Why?
Jackson,
Why?
sell Jackson and buy Isak. That raised my eyebrow.
Yeah, that's a hard no from me. It's a hard no.
And the second one,
What on the genius?
fast up to Gvardiol.
No. Just no. No, no. I mean, to be fair, he did score at the weekend, and I did for a moment think, oh no, Vardiol's going to get a clean sheet and a goal and cause carnage. And that's obviously a good move, right? There's no debating that fast Vardiol is not a good move. I mean, look at the points lines in that graph. Like, that's obviously a good move, but that's not what I want to do with my 3 million odd money that I've got in the bank. It's just obvious to do Strand Larsen to Isak if I'm not priced out. Obvious. But then I've just watched Southampton continue to get spanked week in, week out, concede goal after goal after goal. And Raul Jimenez at 5.6 or whatever he is now, and with the fixtures he's got coming up, it's just really easy. And then I'm just going to go around in circles. Diogo Jota, I've loved. I've had him in my team already this season, and had him last year, and I think he's first choice number 9. You just got to wait to see his minutes. And Trent on any given day can be the best defender in the game. But that team, fixture-wise, doesn't... Obviously, now that I've done the Aït-Nouri to Robinson move, that doesn't need a transfer.
Was that with the amount of money you had held in Aït-Nouri, what was the financial implications of that switch?
Well, that was a bit odd, actually, bringing that up, because I got him at 4.4 and he rose to 4.9, I believe. And I could only sell him for 4.6. So that maths doesn't work out in my head.
Unless he dropped to 4.8 before.
Maybe he had. Don't know. But he was, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I made a couple of 100,000 on him. But yeah, I've got the money to do Strand Larsen to Isak. I think if he goes up in price tonight, there's a chance I'm priced out. So I
Yeah.
might have to make that move. But I don't know.
Final thought, captaincy, to change you from going round in circles with your
Yeah, thanks for that.
transfers.
Yeah, cheers for that. Just
Is
need to
captaincy
bear the
Palmer and
listeners.
Salah. Captaincy Palmer and Salah are both expected with 7.1 points.
If I brought in Isak, I'd be really tempted with that, similar to the Nick Jackson move last week. I think if I was to choose between Salah and Palmer, I'd choose Salah. I think obviously the Everton defence has been pretty decent recently, and that Tottenham defence is, in fact, it's just going to be Salah because that Tottenham defence is melee.
Yeah.
I think they played Archie Gray and Dragusin against Southampton. Jed Spence, and then Porro came on for an injured Udogie, I think. So yeah, I think their defence is in tatters. So I'm probably just going to put it on Salah. But if I was an Isak owner, I would be tempted Ipswich away.
We shall see. Well, let's
Tune in next week to
mine.
find out that I rolled. Let's see how you got on.
Yeah. So my bus team at the moment: Raya with Crystal Palace away, back three of Gabriel, Hall, and Kirkes.
Forgot you had Kirkes.
Yep. Captain Palmer, Salah Vice, Saka, and Semenyo. And then up front, Isak, Jackson, and Wissa. So despite all the lengthy conversations we've had in this episode about forward dilemmas, I'm perfectly content and satisfied with mine. And actually just realising we didn't mention to Barry about Wissa, but he's got a home fixture, so I wouldn't swap him for anybody.
No.
For Wissa's record.
No, fair enough.
As we said, I've done the same transfer move as.
But so you've got a benching headache.
I've got, so on my bench, which isn't viewed at the moment, Fabianski, Wout Fass, Rogers, and Ait-Nouri, who has been replaced by Robinson. Robinson will come in for Kirkes. So I'd have Kirkes on the bench. I've also provisionally put in Rodgers to start at home to Man City rather than Semenyo away to Manchester United. That's kind of, and this is where I'm at for my second free transfer, is either to roll it to have two going into game week 18, or the other one, which is perhaps luxury, is Rodgers. I've got money in and he's cheaper, so as to keep in him. And I sort of semi-hinted at it earlier on yesterday's when we were discussing our teams, is whether to switch Semenyo for Enzo Fernandez and have a Chelsea triple up, or Diallo at Manchester United.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really popular transfer this week. I think he'll be up there.
Because those two players, Enzo and Diallo, Amad Diallo, hopefully I've got his name right, both of them are $500,000 cheaper than Semenyo, and they're returning significantly better. So
who are you leaning towards? I know who I'd do, but who are you leaning towards?
Well, one part of me says Enzo, but that would be a triple up on Chelsea attack. On the flip side, it effectively means that if Chelsea do score, it's highly likely that I've got at least an assist, potentially getting assist and goal scorer. Plus Enzo's captain, so he's not a minute's risk at all. Side, Ahmad's doing all right with Manchester United, and it would mean I'm not too heavily invested in a particular club. It means I've got a little bit of Manchester United coverage. So part of me is leaning a bit towards him over Enzo. But then because Semenyo's fit and he does have some nice fixtures after the Man United one, do I just roll with a transfer? So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
I like I like the Semenyo to Ahmad move, but I see it as a sideways move, and the same goes for Enzo. Enzo, for all of his attacking exploits recently, is essentially a central midfielder, and could be asked to drop back deep again. At the moment, they've been playing with sort of two in there, and him as the furthest forward. And he's had a bit of a free roll. Again, your team, looking at it, just says roll, doesn't it? Let's be honest. Obviously, you're not going to sell any of those front three. You're not going to sell Saka, Palmer, Salah. You're not going to sell Gabriel, Hall, or Raya. You've just brought in Kirkes, so he's going nowhere. So, Anthony Robinson's just come in and he's going nowhere. The one thing I would say about Enzo Fernandez is that blocks the third Chelsea spot. So if you were to want one of their defenders over their nice run of games coming up, if Gabriel were to get injured or Hall, God forbid, was to get injured, then you'd want to be able to pivot onto a Chelsea defender, in my opinion. So maybe don't block that third Chelsea spot. The Amad Diallo move is going to be a really popular one this week, but I think it's a bit early to go over onto United. I don't think that game against Bournemouth is going to be as easy as a Man City game, which is a crazy sentence. But
it's why I'm putting Rodgers why I put in Semenyo at the moment, whereas Fantasy Football Hub's put it up as it is on screen. I've got Robinson coming in for Kirkes, so Kirkes is on the bench, and I've actually, although it's got that Fantasy Football Hub put Semenyo as getting more points, I've put in Rodgers at home.
Yeah, I was about to say, if Villa are at home, then
midfielder.
Yeah, if Villa are at home, I don't, which they are, because obviously City were at the Etihad at the weekend. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If it was my team, I'd keep Semenyo in the team because I think he's got a higher ceiling than Rodgers does. But I don't mind the move. It's obviously the City are more of an out of form team than United are currently.
It's effectively that fourth midfielder slot. It's thinking, right, okay, it's, do I have Rodgers at home to Man City, who I've got? Do I play some away to Manchester United, who I've got? Or do I go and Chelsea away to Everton, and Everton's defence have tightened up lately. Now they've got their first choice defence back. So it's hardly screaming out Chelsea massive haul. Or Ahmad again at home to Bournemouth, and Bournemouth don't get battered. They don't concede a huge amount of goals.
No.
So I think I'm probably going to veer towards rolling, to be honest, because it'll either be that but what I am going to look into really is I'm happy with the rotations and the solidity of my defence and my front three. What I'm probably looking at really is the rotation combos between Wissa, Semenyo, Rodgers, and how I could get a better rotation of fixtures for that third forward spot and midfielders 4 and 5, because Brentford are terrible away from home, so I wouldn't actually mind keeping Wissa and playing him in the home fixtures and benching him for the away fixtures and playing a 3-5-2. So that's a fixture investigation that I will look into.
Well, you got Palace and Fulham, haven't you? We spoke about in the last episode. Got some nice fixtures coming up, so we'll see. But yeah,
we shall see. Alert! I forgot this slide. No. Fantasy Football Hub recommends I make no transfer this week. And that was made before it was aware that I made the Aït-Nouri to Robinson. So that was recommending I make no transfer despite having Fast and Aït-Nouri with predicted 0 points at the week sitting on my
What,
bench.
don't you want to do Fast to Vardio?
Haven't got the money. Would have to be Fast to someone else.
It could be a Chelsea defender. Yeah. Good idea. I'd rather have Fast. But just 0 points for sitting on the bench is better than 0 points because you're conceding goals for fun. Yeah, about Fast. He's a better defender.
So, if you have found our forward dilemmas useful and helpful and want to let us know which way you're going, if you are going to make any transfer moves this week, changing to your front line, then place them in our comments, X, Facebook group, Fantasy Premier League, FPL 1, YouTube channel in response to this, commenting on this video. Like and subscribe, please, and the Spotify channel below. But as I said in yesterday's, the more subscribers we get, the better, because it'll enable us to improve the visual, pictorial bitrate, as well as being able to do some live broadcasts, which is something that we've spoke about doing off screen. Anyway, final thoughts from you?
No, tune in next week to find out I rolled after all my options. Probably. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed anything, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. And if you haven't, just do it anyway, just because it's fun.
Yeah, and if there was anything you disagree with, then again, do let us know. Make for interesting dilemmas and stuff to discuss further down the line.
Or keep it to yourself if it's about me.
Possibly. or how amazingly brilliant and clinical Southampton are.
Yeah, not many comments coming there. We're supposed to drive traffic, I think. But anyway, thank you for watching. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. And all I can say is keep your FPL affairs under wraps until after the deadline. Goodbye, everybody.